Hello and welcome to this week's question and answer session. We have three, well, first of all, I'll tell you, I'm still in the Isle of Rhodes in Greece. I've been here for about, a week and a half or so, and it has been absolutely perfect. I mean, I put up a video about why I left Asia and why I came here, and this place is I came here to escape. Right, I came here to get away from everything that, I was doing in Asia. And it has been, a 100% perfect escape plan. Anyway, I'll probably make plenty of more videos about that coming soon. But right now we have three rather complicated questions this week. What's unique about this Q&A session is all three of these questions come from people that I know. People that I know personally, that I went to school with, that I worked with. So I know these people, and they know me. And they were able to ask some pretty interesting questions. But to start this off, I'm going to start this off with a question from my old friend Steve Mendoza. I went to school with Steve in Japan in 2004. So that's 14 years ago, right? That's quite a while ago. So anyway, Steve asked, how does it feel to look like a hipster before looking like a hipster was cool, thereby out-hipstering the hipsters? Yeah, Steve, I guess I do kind of look a little peculiar. Some would say a little bit funny. I think I look cool, but Steve often calls me the original hipster, right? Because he feels that I dressed like a hipster before there was a such thing called hipsters. I don't know. I mean, I don't even fucking really know what a hipster is. Hey, what's a hipster? Is that just someone who tries to be cool by purposely dressing in an uncool way? Right? And basically, oh man, I guess I'll give you a rundown of my fashion influences. It sounds kind of weird to say, but anyway, this kind of started out from just being a traveling crust punk, my late teen, early 20s years, mohawks and studded leather jackets and big boots and all that shit, going around the USA and Latin America playing loud music and pretending I was an anarchist. So I had that influence. That influence kind of combined with kind of this backcountry kind of style, which is kind of strange because I grew up in an agricultural area, right? Where I come from, in this it's basically just this expanse of farmland that's in between Rochester and Buffalo, New York, right? It's only farms between there. The kind of kids in the city they'd kind of make fun of us. They'd call us the farmer punks, and that was actually pretty accurate. And that kind of mixed with kind of this Indiana Jones fantasy kind of traveler explorer kind of sense of fashion when I began traveling, right? Like you read through these old travel diaries and travel manuals, and there's these drawings of these old explorers, and they look kind of cool, right? They have these leather vests and these big leather boots and pretty cool hats, right? So that kind of morphed itself into my style as well. But actually, one of my biggest, I guess fashion influences was probably my grandfather. My grandfather, he was a traveler as well. He was a showman. He'd promote carnivals and fairs and pretty much anything else, all over the USA. And growing up, it was kind of normal to have a grandfather that drove around in a big van that was painted all up with clowns and with the rocking horses attached to the top. To the top of his van, he attached these rocking horses and all these signs about the circus and the fair and stuff like that. And behind this van he pulled this big trailer that he could like, you know, like put up these, it was basically a big moving sign that he could like put up the words or the slogans or, you know, the times of whatever events that he was promoting in the areas that he drove through. And to top this all off, he had these massive loudspeakers all over this van, right? And his job was to go into towns and cities blasting polka music, telling people to come to the fair or come to the carnival, right? And you know, I used to travel around with him, you know, doing this when I was a kid, and it was just, oh man, it was just absolutely incredible. And he wouldn't just like be like, come to the fair, come to the carnival, but he'd be like interacting with people like in the streets, you know, from his loudspeakers. So someone would be walking on the street, he'd be like, how you doing, little lady, and stuff like that, like totally weird everybody out, right? But he was a character, right? He was a character about town. Like everybody knew this guy, and he dressed like a character, right? He would wear these big cowboy hats, and you know, these vests had like, you know, these studs on it, and these like kind of cool, kind of like necklace, kind of like harness kind of things, right? And I don't even know what they're really called. And you know, like big belt buckles, and you know, like cowboy boots, right? And I kind of grew up just kind of looking at him, thinking that he was really cool, right? I mean, first of all, he traveled everywhere. You know, secondly, he worked for himself. Thirdly, you know, everybody looked at this guy, you know. Everybody, you know, was just fascinated by him. And just wherever he went, he would engage people, right? Because he had the personality to go with the style. Like, you go into a restaurant, he's talking to everybody. He's, you know, joking with people. You know, he's he's very good at the social jockey and the bullshitting. You know, he'd always have a joke for someone, right? Usually these kind of real crude kind of jokes. And he was pretty much my first example or my first model of how to act or how to behave when traveling, when entering, you know, new communities or new groups of people. How to, basically just how to engage people, right? How to make people like you. How to make people, you know, want to be around you and want to talk to you, right? Because he was kind of guy that he always had a story for everybody, right? And growing up, kind of like, you know, just looking at this guy when I was a little kid, he was just, you know, he was pretty much the coolest thing I knew, right? And so when I started getting older, I started kind of incorporating, I guess, you know, first of all, elements of his lifestyle and the way that he acted and, you know, the way that he engaged people, but also elements of his style, his fashion sense also came with that, and it kind of stayed with me to this day. So anyway, let's get on to the next question. The next question is another tough one. It comes from my friend Ken Diora. I used to work archaeology with Ken out in Arizona, and we used to stay in this trailer together at a place called the Quartzsite Yacht Club, right? The Quartzsite Yacht Club was a yacht club in a place where there was absolutely no trace of water, because it's like out in the middle of the fucking desert of Arizona, right? And this guy moved out there and he got this idea that it would be funny to open up a yacht club in a place where there's no water, right? So he did it, and it's basically a trailer park where he rents out the trailers to travelers, kind of like a hotel, kind of like a rent-a-trailer kind of thing. And, you know, it has all these trailers around like this central bar, and all these retired people and, you know, travelers and whoever the fuck else is out there kind of like hangs out in these trailers, and every night they just go into this bar and just get, you know, fucking drunk, right? So dude, that's the context in which I know Ken. And I haven't really seen Ken in years and years. I mean, we did that project in 2009 we did that project. Anyway, Ken's question is, finally thought of a Q for your Q&A. What were the first 3 places you traveled to after receiving your passport? And how did cultural differences shape your initial perspective on that activity? Woo. The first 3 places that I traveled after getting my passport, I'm assuming means international locations. The first country that I went to, internationally. I mean, first of all, my first year of travel was pretty much around the USA, where I was traveling around with a band at first, and then I, did a semester of school in Florida, in the south of Florida, and then I went to Connecticut. Then I went abroad. The first place I went abroad to was Ecuador, and that trip changed everything, and kind of like wrote the script of my life to follow. That was, I did 6 weeks in archaeology field school in Ecuador, and that pretty much, set the trajectory for the rest of my life, all the way up to here, right? During that trip, first of all, I realized that I could travel. I realized that, hey, I could just, get on a plane and go to another country. And now there's like all these like blogs and all this information about traveling. But back then, man, it was the year it was year 2000. Back in the year 2000, the internet was still in its infancy, and getting this, like on the ground, first person, experience and information about traveling, it just was difficult. It just wasn't really out there. I didn't even know that there was a such thing called guidebooks. I didn't even know that Lonely Planet existed on this trip. That's where I first started seeing people, the little books that they were always reading that basically told them what to do, right? And I'm like, hey, what's that? Like, oh, it's a Lonely Planet. It tells me what to do. And, basically I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing about traveling at that point. This was even before I found, the blog of Andy Graham, the Hobo Traveler, which had an incredible influence on me. This was years before that, so I didn't know anybody that traveled. I didn't know anybody who even went abroad, right? So I approached this kind of absolutely and completely cold turkey. And I learned a ton, man. First of all, I learned how to be an archaeologist, right? I learned, the field school I went to was incredible, right? I went there and I learned the trade of archaeology to the extent that I was able to go back to the USA and get a relatively well-paying job, at least for my age then, a relatively well-paying job, as a professional archaeologist. So I learned that, and I also, what really had an incredible impression on me was meeting other travelers. And back then, it sounds a little strange now, but I was really into like the traveling backpacking community. I was really into meeting like other backpackers and people from Europe and other people from other places in Latin America, and I thought they all were so cool. Like just traveling around with a backpack, doing whatever you wanted. I thought that was the coolest. Man, granted, I was like 18, 19 years old then, right? I was still formulating my views on the planet and myself and what I wanted to do, and just basically just learning what was possible. And then I saw all these kids hanging out in the hostels in Quito who were just living that life, and I basically just realized that all that was possible. But there's also, I guess it was also, a cultural shock as well. Well, not a cultural shock. I don't believe in culture shock. Culture shock is just, it's just a misplaced word for, someone that's not adaptable, right? The scaredy cat, basically. There's no such thing as culture shock. Anyway, this field school was in a place called Selongo on the coast of Ecuador, and this place was about as removed from the rest of the planet as a place could pretty much get. Right, it was just a small little fishing village, and it blew my mind because in every single way it was completely different. than the place that I came from, of everything I knew. And it was exactly what I was looking for in the travel experience. I mean, to the T. I mean, meeting people and talking to people and watching the fishermen bring in the catch. And I also had this little crush on this girl in town. She kind of had a crush on me, and we'd meet up and go for these little walks and have these little adventures. And I mean, in every way possible, it was the quintessential first travel experience, right? And I mean, it had it all. It had the whole backpacker kind of chaotic party environment. It had, the work, the archaeology, like learning, something in depth, element. And it also had this deep cultural element as well. But that was the first country I traveled. The next country, well, the next year I went back to Ecuador and also Peru too. Peru was the second country I went to. And that was, pretty raw. And my travel partner then, she was pretty keen, as far as travel goes. She was a good traveler, and we went. I mean, the goal then, I was still young and, I guess immature, but the goal was to get off the map, to go. Now that I knew what Lonely Planet was, the goal was to get beyond the Lonely Planet and really go out, into the middle of nowhere. And the person I was traveling with was absolutely fearless, and I was stupidly fearless then too. And we basically just went off the grid in the Andes Mountains, and in the deserts of of Peru, and even in the cities of Lima, where set ourselves up in places we probably really shouldn't have been, hanging out with people that we probably really shouldn't have been hanging out with. And it was just an example of testing the limits of travel and what you can get away with without being killed. Everybody has to do that. At some point in your travel career, that is just something that you need to do, right? Find out where those boundaries are. Find out where the boundaries are, push them a little bit, and then pull back. And kind of realize that you don't really want to go that far again. Or if you keep doing that, you're probably not going to come back, right? And so I learned that then. The third country I went to was Chile. There's a South America theme here. I went to Chile by myself. I went to Chile and Argentina and Uruguay on those travels. I spent most of my time down in Patagonia. I did these travels alone, and basically my goal was to get as far out there as possible. And you can't get any farther out there than Patagonia. It was pretty lonely, man. I mean, I believe I went for an entire month without talking to another person beyond ordering an egg sandwich or something like that. It was remote. It was desolate. It was lonely, and it was beautiful, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I just basically went into Patagonia for the Patagonia part of those travels was lasted about 3 months, and I basically just went out there in the middle of nowhere and just wrote in my journals, right? Wrote and wrote and wrote, and it was there that I began that it initiated and developed and kind of sunk into this habit of writing daily, all day long. And something, this may sound strange, right? But something like physically changed and kind of the makeup of my mind during those travels, right? Now, this may sound corny, I don't know, just skip this part of the video if you don't want to hear this. But when you start writing daily about your life, and any event that can happen, during the span of that day is fodder for writing. After you do that for a while, you start to see yourself as a character. And once you start seeing yourself as a character, you kind of physically become removed almost from your physical self. You start seeing things from the outside, from the perspective of a writer, from the perspective of a storyteller, rather than just, you know, from the perspective of the actor, of the person who is actually having these experiences and doing these things. I want you to have this detachment, right, which is an attachment that I feel is absolutely essential for the writing process. Once you have this detachment, there's really no going back. You all of a sudden start, you kind of become emotionally detached almost from your own life, and you start taking things to be not as seriously as you would otherwise. You start realizing that things don't matter, and even bad things, you realize, are all part of the story. And at some point, you just realize that not your life, but your narrative is the most important, you know, or one of the most important things to you, right? The story. And you really start, I mean, basically you get sucked all in into this story, and all of a sudden you become, you know, more of a storyteller rather than a person. I don't know, maybe that sounds strange, but you know, as I go through these days every day, it's been this way for about 20 years now. You know, everything you see, you're narrating, right? Every experience that you have, you're narrating in your head. Everything that happens, or everything that you think of, you know, is connected with other things in these, you know, broad, you know, generally linear storylines. It's, I mean, maybe it was kind of a psychosis, but, you know, it was in Patagonia where this started happening for me, and it's kind of stuck in it ever since. And I guess it's worked wonders in my career, right? You know, I don't think I could have this career as a writer if this, you know, just didn't happen. So anyway, that was another installment of our Q&A session. If you have any questions for me that you'd like me to answer next week, just leave them in the comments down below, or email them to me, or, you know, find me on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or anything else. Just, you know, call me on the phone, or, you know, come to Rhodes and walk through my gate and tell me in person, right? whatever you want, and I'll collect all these questions and I'll answer them next week.